Vineet,
Yes, ma'am.
are you able to hear me or see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Acha, I wanted to ask you something. When you are doing some WhatsApp messages, if they come in between, they will be obstructed or what will happen?
They will show a notification, ma'am. Nothing more than that.
No. For me, if somebody is sending a WhatsApp notification, then will it obstruct the program?
No, ma'am. It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Okay. Now this Zoom link that you have sent to me now, can I send it to others also?
No, ma'am. You can share the link which I have given to you.
That YouTube link.
Yes.
Acha, Zoom, this thing, if others have downloaded, they'll be able to see us in this program if they have registered.
No, ma'am. Not on Zoom. They would be able to see only on YouTube.
Telegram. Okay. I am sending the YouTube link to everyone. Huh?
Yes, ma'am.
So how to minimize this?
Just normally how you minimize an app and go.
Hello, are you hearing me? Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
We are just 3 minutes away from starting a conversation live. We request all the participants to be patient, and we'll start in just about 3 minutes time.
Hi, Vineet.
Hi, sir. How are you? 3 minutes away from starting the conversation live.
Okay.
We request all the participants to be patient, and we'll start in just about 3 minutes time. Yeah, we are all set to go live.
Good evening, one and all. I, Tanvi Kothi, CEO at P.U. Educational Service, welcome you all to one-day international webinar on pandemic, a personal, educational, and economic revolution. We are a 3 years old young startup and we cater into preparing professionals for various competitive exams like Diploma in Banking and Finance, RBI B grade officer exams, IBPS, CFA, CWM, UPSC, MPSC, etc. Our main aim is to provide maximum efforts so that the students can crack these exams with a good score. We also provide mentoring sessions, corporate trainings, and conduct various webinars with colleges, institutions, and universities. I would now like to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Joshua Zamit sir. He's an experienced manager with over 20 years in private and public sector and extensive international experience. He started his career as an associate consultant working in unit within the office of the Prime Minister in Malta. He was worked in a number of organizations in the HR field covering the whole spectrum of HR activities and industrial relations. In 2012, Mr. Joshua played a vital role in national airline Air Malta. He has also served as the CEO and deputy chairman of industrial parks in Malta. He is the founder of Novargo Limited, established in 2011 and works in different companies as a consultant. Mr. Joshua was also the president of Malta Employers Association and speaker Also a contributor to the Business Forum of Commonwealth Head of Government Meetings. I would now like Sir to put forth his view. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for that. Is the audio all right? Everyone is hearing me?
Yes, sir. Perfectly
Okay.
all right.
So what I will do is I would like to share my screen.
Yeah. One
Can
second.
you?
Yes, sir. You can go ahead.
Okay, so what I will be doing today is I would like to present to you some research about the work that we have been doing on the pandemic and how things have changed or will be changing as a result of this. So the topic of today's webinar is the pandemic, a personal education and economic revolution. And what we've done is we have created research which is focused on Malta and on Europe, but I think the outcome of this research is a good basis for discussion across all the different nationalities that we are seeing today on this webinar. So without much further ado, as presented before, I represent a company, a boutique consultancy firm called Novargo, which I have founded in 2011. We work with a lot of different organizations across different sectors, and part of the work that we do is related to research and research such as the one that I'm going to be presenting to you. Anyone who would like to connect with us, these are the details, and we are happy to speak and work together on different types of work that can be done. What I will be covering today in my presentation are, I will obviously introduce the research, I will talk about the methodology and the sample that we have adopted. I will present to you also the model that we have created and which came out as a result of this research. And then I will talk a little bit about the results. I will not go into a lot of detail, but by the end of my presentation, I will provide you with the link. If you wish to download the full report, you can do so by downloading it and following the link, which I will give you at the end of the presentation. So without taking a lot of time, the research was carried out in March of this year, between March and April of this year. And primarily what it does, it is looking into how people, high-level people within society, think things will change or will become after the pandemic. The methodology that we have used is a methodology based on a survey. The survey was administered electronically, and the data collected is qualitative data. So in this case, we decided to go for a process which provided us with good qualitative data and which helped us in understanding, giving us a very deep understanding of the ideas and the thoughts of the people who are participating in this research. In fact, the questionnaire gave us a very rich set of qualitative data. And as I've said, we collected this data between the 23rd of March and the 10th of April. We've done this electronically, and we received 61 completed questionnaires. Now, 61 might not seem like a very big number, but when we are talking about qualitative data, that sample gives you a very strong basis, since normally it's anything above 30 in a qualitative research tends to start giving you very, very good information. So The sample that we have collected data from is very varied. Our age group ranged from 25 years to over 60, so we have covered a lot of the working population, and the economic sectors that we have looked into are healthcare, communications, distribution, education, environment, events management, financial services, import, laboratory services, manufacturing, oil and gas, professional services, the public sector, real estate, retail, technology, and travel. So as you can see, we have taken quite a wide variety of economic sectors, which gave us a very good representation of the economy as a whole. As part of the respondents, we also received respondents from replies from, as I said, 61 different people. And the way that the respondents were split are shown in this slide now. So we've had people coming from CEO level, head of schools, general managers, that would be group 1. Group 2 are board level respondents. So these would be managing directors, chairman, partners, business owners, and people of that level. Group 3 are consultants and other professionals, such as lawyers, architects, and people working within that level. Group 4 are the self-employed, and again, these are people who are working in their own companies or in their own trades. Then we had academics, we had financial officers, chief financial officers, managers, one person who was retired, and some students. So as you can see, again, the respondents gave us a very wide and very broad spread of professions and levels within the organization. So based on that, it was quite obvious that whilst we were doing the data analysis, we had a model which was forming up. We had a theoretical model, and then we confirmed that model through the data analysis. And primarily, when we look at this, the model that we have seen is split into 2. There is the vertical pillars, and the vertical pillars, there are 8, and out of these 8 vertical pillars, what we have seen was the areas that were of interest to us within the research. The vertical pillars, or the 8 areas, are the economy, work, business, government, health, education, society, social relations and lifestyle, and religion. So this was our main interest. These are the areas where the questions in the questionnaire or in the survey focused and on which we got the responses. But as we developed this, we also realized that as part of our of the research, we were identifying a number of enablers which were cutting across all these pillars. And these we have called the horizontal enablers. Now, as you can see, we are focusing this on Malta, and which is part of the European Union. Therefore, the European Union plays an important role in all of this, especially given the way that it has handled the pandemic in the past few months. But the horizontal enablers were digital transformation, business continuity, the European Union, environment, and the way we live. And what we meant by this, what we meant by these horizontal enablers, are a set of activities which were cutting across and which, in the opinion of our respondents, these activities were important to help restart each of those vertical pillars. So these were the things which were required to use or were part of the considerations that were required when we were discussing the vertical pillars. So in order for me to be able to expand a little bit on this. As you might imagine, there is a lot of stuff. In fact, the report is about 55 pages long. And as I said, you can download this from our website. I will give you the link to that later on. But what I will do now is I will give you a short and a small taste of what the results are. What we've done is that we've split the results according to the different pillars. So we split the results according to economy, work, business, government, health, etc. And for each one, I will highlight the main things that came out of the research and the main points that were raised. Of course, there is much more to the data than we are presenting here, but the amount of time that we have to present this information is somewhat limited. So without no further ado, I will start talking about the results. The first pillar is the economy. And what we understand by the economy is that, of course, the pandemic has had a huge impact on the economy with very severe socio-economic consequences if this impact is not addressed. Now, one of the things that we discussed when I was invited to speak at this webinar was what are differences between the developed countries and the developing countries. And I think that is one important factor when it comes to the economy, because the way that we will address the issues that have been raised within the economy will have a different impact, and probably less developed countries might find it more difficult to address those issues than the more developed countries. Although, having said that, and this is a big proviso, the way that most of the developed countries have addressed the issue or the pandemic has left quite a lot to be desired in a lot of countries. So what we've done as part of this research, and when we asked questions about the economy, there were two main points that came out with regards to the economy. The first one is that economic development will be different. And what we mean by that is that whereas the major areas of economic development were moving ahead, and there is a lot of industrialization, there is a lot of processes going on, it could be that something like this, something like the pandemic, will either put a brake on that or will make us think in a different way of how to use economic development. And one of the main issues that is a very hot topic, especially in Europe, is the question of sustainability. Now, when we talk about sustainability, we're talking about sustainability at two levels. As a business person, I would assume that sustainability refers to the sustainability of my business. But at the same time, sustainability also refers to having or preparing the economy to be able to hand it over to future generations. So we have a responsibility towards future generations who are able to continue living and continue growing the economy that we have are accustomed to. So in this case, economic development, we think that would be different if we start to address it from a different perspective, and sustainability will be one of those perspectives. Also, related to this is the second point, that the economic priorities will change. And what we mean by that is that at least this is focused on Malta and on Europe, but probably it would look at, you can apply it to other areas. What was or what could have been particular economic priorities for governments before the pandemic, those might not remain central, and other economic priorities might be taken into consideration. So for example, if we are thinking of, let's say, construction being one of the most important economic priorities because it was generating substantial revenue into the coffers of the country, it could be that because of sustainability, there would be a different way of looking at construction, and research and technology might then become a priority over something else. Now, of course, depending on the country and depending on the different areas that one is working in, the priorities might be different, and the policies that you apply for these priorities could also be applied in a different way. So that is a little bit about the economy and the research and the results that we achieved from our research. The second area, well, this is actually the second and third area, and we combine business and work together. And one of the reasons that we are talking about here with business and work, the main thing that we need to understand is that because of the pandemic and the shutting of the economy, major restrictions on movement and socialization of people were placed. And because of that, business and work were among the first areas to experience major change. So that in itself is quite important, because as soon as the economy shut off, as it did in most countries, this was unprecedented. What happened was that, you know, we had an economy going, and then all of a sudden it was switched off. And what happened here is that we've seen businesses close down and people stopping from going to work. And because of that, we've had to find situations, or we had to find or adapt to situations like working from home, or working from not going to the office. And we needed to start looking at businesses from a different way. So the 2 points that came out from here is that obviously the way that we work will change. And because we have seen or experimented a lot now with work, not going to the office and working away from the office. If we look at education, this is case in point, but I will come to that very soon. We will see that there are differences in the way we will be working, probably even in the future. Of course, we need to be careful in saying this, because if we had to find a vaccine, and it would be an effective vaccine which would work and which can be distributed to the people in the world, then in most likelihood, things will not change as much as we think that they are going to change, because things might go back to what they were before. But again, it all depends on the type of vaccine that we would find and how long it will take us to find such a vaccine. It could be that we will never find it. The second point that came out from this, from business and work, is that the way we do business also will change. And what we have experienced here now is, with the shutting down of aircraft, of airports, and not being able to travel at all, we had to start thinking of a different way of how to do business. So what was a face-to-face meeting, and what was an important face-to-face meeting, was being done over the phone or over teleconferencing or video conferencing. And that has changed completely the dynamic of how we do business. Besides that, also, what is also important in the case of businesses is that up to now, we have been looking, and whenever we are analyzing a company or an institution, we normally look at the efficiency of the company. We look at the efficiency of the supply chain. We look at the productivity of the employees and the productivity of the company. Going forward, although efficiency will remain an important part, it is our belief that resilience will become also a very, very important aspect that we would need to look into. What does it mean by that? It means that if you have an organization, if you have a company, if you have a business, how resilient is it to be able to sustain shocks and to sustain surprises? Because as we've seen, those organizations and those companies that were built on strong foundations, that were able to carry out business in the way that, you know, normally we teach people how to carry out business, having reserves, taking care of their employees, having good structures in place, having good financial resources. Those businesses seem to have managed to at least try and weather the storm that we have been focusing on. So in reality, the way we do things and the way we do business will probably change, and we need to look at these things going forward. The next pillar is government. And again, now government plays a very important role, or played a very important role in all of this. Now, of course, government systems tend to differ and tend to change. They are different. If you are in the US, there is one government system. In Europe, there is a different government system. In Asia, there is a different government system. And the intervention of governments going into the economy and going into what was being done was very, very different. But having said that, government played a very important role, at least in Europe, in that they had to intervene into the economy in ways that we have never seen in other times, at least not in my lifetime. And this has given a lot of power, immense power to government and to its bureaucracy. So now we have to be very careful that going forward, this power that was given to government does not go against the rules of free market. And how will this be retained, or what will happen? So those are some very major questions that we would need to answer going forward. There are a few things which came out of this. The first point is that government focus and work will shift. It is probably a normal thing that after such a shock, the focus of government might change to a certain extent, because we will have a situation where government needs now to recover the economy, to re-strengthen the economy, and to restart the economy. So the focus there might change. Also, the management of public finances will change. I think we have seen that those countries which had strong public finances will be the first countries that will rebound in terms of economic productivity or economic growth or economic activity. Those countries which were in big financial difficulties are going to be the countries which will probably continue to face those financial difficulties and would need to address them in very drastic measures. Debt to GDP ratio, for example, is very important. So those countries that were seeing debt to GDP ratio over 100% or over 90% are in big trouble. Other countries which had less debt to GDP ratio were would probably bounce back quicker and were able to provide a better net to their businesses in order for them to be able to regain the loss that they were making over the past few months and that they would be making over the next few months. Government involvement, I have spoken a little bit about this. I think there is the need to have a very big discussion about the level of government involvement. Again, this differs, and this is very different depending on the country, depending on the region that you are in, and therefore how this will work out is still to be seen. And also with regards to political systems, there is the possibility that they will change. We have seen the rise of populist parties and populist politics. Whether this will continue or not is something that we need to discuss and we need to see. The next column or the next pillar is health. And I think something which this pandemic has highlighted is how important it is to be prepared for health emergencies. Now, again, and this is probably one of the main areas where the difference between developed and developing countries might come up. And health preparedness and the availability of health services is something I think which is quite important. What we are seeing here is that most probably people will become much more aware of their health, and there will be we will experience higher awareness in health. And we were already quite aware of it, but I think people are more afraid and will take precautions and will probably change the practices and the behaviors in order to align that with what is happening in terms of health services. Also, there is the likelihood that people will be more afraid, and that is very clear from the research that we have done, and they will trust less. So, things like shaking hands, hugging each other, kissing each other, and things like that might become a thing of the past. Even if we want to go to places, then we start asking questions: how many people will be there, whether it's safe to go, whether I will be touching a lot of people, and things like that. Now, in countries where there is a lot of space and where maybe smaller populations, that might not be an issue. In other countries where density is high, population density is high, and there are a lot of people, that might be an issue because, as we know, the virus is spread through social contact and physical contact. And that is something that we need to look into. Another thing which came up is the prioritization of health and related matters. It seems to us that governments will place, if they had not already done so, will place health on their agenda. It is a very important thing to look into. There are very strong arguments and there are very strong discussions which can be taken in this case. Things like a national health service, things like availability of health for everyone, access to health, free health services. All of these questions can be answered and probably will need to be answered. We've got countries on one end which have no free health services, whereas we've got other countries on the other hand which have complete free health services and very good free health services. And therefore, how these have managed the pandemic and how they will come out of it, I think is a factor which will warrant much more research in the future, and I think is a factor of importance. Last but not least, in terms of health, is the question of mental health. There are different aspects to it. I've spoken about fear and anxiety earlier on. This will have an impact on the mental health of people. But not only that, social distancing, lockdowns, all of these have an impact on mental health. And we might be looking at, going forward, a number of issues that we would need to deal with in terms of mental health, both in businesses, at work, and in private and social life. So mental health probably is one of those areas that we need to focus on going forward. The next pillar is education. And what we have seen is that there is general agreement when it comes to education, that education plays a very, very important part for the future. Having said that, what we have seen, and this is something which we have seen in Malta, but I've read that there were other countries which were having the same problem. And what we've seen is that education was the slowest to adapt to the situation that we were faced with. And I understand that education in this particular group is of major importance. I will spend a little bit of time here. What we understand here is that education, at least what came out, is that education needs to change. And what we mean by that is that education needs to really take a good look at how it is doing things, at how it is funded, at how it is preparing people for entry into the economy, and it needs to change the way it delivers its lessons, its material. We have a model which is primarily built on face-to-face interaction and sitting in a class and having discussions. That model might be one of those things that would need to change going forward. Now, how effective it is, how it will be working, that could be something that we would need to discuss. I don't have the time to go into that, but there are very big discussions in terms of that on how we would be dealing with that part. But what came out from our research, at least, is that the way we do education needs to change. Also, the use of technology in education. This, I think, is different depending on what most countries are doing. But the way it works is that we need to use more technology in the way we are doing education, whether it is face-to-face, whether it is blended learning, whether it is via via video conferencing, but technology should play a very important role. What I am meaning in this case is that we are not saying that we need to teach people more about technology. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we need to use technology in the delivery of education. And again, that is a very major argument and discussion that might needs to be taken. Also, we need to understand, and this came very clear from our research, is that education has a social dimension. So, having people staying at home or not meeting up might have an impact on the quality of education. And therefore, again, that is one of the things that we need to look into, especially when it comes to young children, where the character building and the formation of these children is very important, and education plays a very important role in for that to happen. So therefore, these are all very big topics that need to be discussed with education, but it is very interesting that everyone agrees that it is a very important topic for the future, but at the same time, it needed to adapt quite quickly, and it was the slowest to adapt in this case. Last two pillars before I stop. The next one is society, social relations, and lifestyle. The pandemic, COVID-19, has placed a lot of restrictions on social and physical distancing. And therefore, this has, if we understand that people are social beings and it is very important for people to socialize and meet, the fact that we had to have social and physical distancing has cut directly at the very existence of the human race. People are not made to stay on their own. We are meant to interact. We grow when we are interacting with other people. We learn when we are interacting with other people. And the fact that we needed to distance ourselves has had an impact on what we have done. So as a result of this, if, again, all things being equal, society will probably change. I've mentioned a little bit about this: fear, lack of trust, things like that. We would need to be very careful about that, and therefore the way we interact with one another, the way we do work, the way we socialize with one another, those are all things which might change. In fact, we've already seeing this in different countries where for example, restaurants are reopening. There are a lot of restrictions that are being placed. You go into a shop, you see a barrier between you as the customer and the person who is serving you, because we are trying to restrict as much as possible that type of interaction. You need to wear a mask when you are outside. All of these things are things which are probably going to remain with us and which will have an impact or an effect on the type of social relations and the type of lifestyle that we have and the way society is built. And also, another thing is that we will probably have stricter rules of engagement, and this is what I've just talked about with terms of, how many people can be together, the space that is required and things like that. And it is probably also going to be part of government policy to legislate and to put forward such rules. Last but not least, I will not spend a lot of time on this, but we have also looked at religion. And what we meant when we looked at religion is that we wanted to try and understand whether religion will play or will continue to play or will stop playing a role in the lives of people. Now, again, I know that this could be a very hot topic, and this could be a topic which people might disagree on, depending on which part of the world you are in. Religion plays a different role in one's life, but we have understood it also to be that religion or some form of spirituality, we're not just focusing on an organized religion, provide some form of meaning to people's life and protects human beings from existential anxiety. So this is how we have defined religion in our case. And there were some interesting discussions coming up in this case. One of them is that religion will become more relevant. Now, you need to appreciate that this type of research has been carried out in a very secular society, and therefore the importance of religion or the relevance of religion is questioned very, very often. in societies which might be more focused on religion, this might not be the case. Also, uh, we have seen quite a shift in terms of religion being a matter of convenience. And what we mean by that is that we have seen that when people face difficulties or face anxiety, they tend to turn to religion because it is one possible way of answering the questions of uncertainty of the future. And therefore, when things are going fine, then religion is not important. When things are a bit difficult, then religion becomes important. We also understood that most people think that religion needs to adapt. It needs to adapt to the situations that we are living in and the situations that we are facing. It has not always happened. Most people who are answering these questions, I would say the biggest majority, over 99% or 95% of the people, are Christians. Therefore, there is a focus on that, and which might be different if we're looking at different types of religions. And also, it might also become less relevant. And this is quite interesting because the first point that I've made was that it will become more relevant. The last point that I'm making is that it becomes less relevant. Different people are looking at it from different ways. And unless there is this adaptation, the issue of becoming less relevant is if things go well, then and we are cleared from this pandemic, then religion once again will become a matter of convenience. But the jury is still out there for that to happen. So I don't have much more to say about this. As I've said, I've tried to give you as much as possible a very quick overview of the work that we have been doing in terms of the pandemic and how this is affecting the different pillars that I have presented. I hope you found it interesting. If you are interested in the full report, on the screen, you can see the link to take you to this report. You can download the full copy. So by going to www.novargo.com/insights, and I will be here now, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inputs. I would now like to welcome our second speaker, Dr. Vijaya Lakshmi Rangarajan, ma'am. Dr. Vijayalakshmi Rangarajan is a recognized name associated to the field of management research and education. She is an alumnus of IIT Madras and IIM Ahmedabad. Her domain expertise revolves around strategic management and business model innovation, technology applications in new product development, and business analytics. Her specific industry focus has been in healthcare and education. She is teaching and researching as a professor with the renowned Wellinger Institute of Management, Development and Research, Mumbai, for over a decade now. She has a management consulting firm, Serendipity Ideations, that offers new ideas on business models to corporates and service sectors. She is consulting for leading FMCG and pharma companies on process and business method innovations. She has also presented papers in several international conferences on various business management subjects. She has worked on Government of India projects, the very recent being with Indian Council of Scientific Research and IIT Madras to study the R&D landscape of India for policy reconstruction in innovation for the Department of Science and Technology. Prior to this, she was associated with the Ministry of Commerce, State Government of Maharashtra to study the ease of doing business in the MSME sector. She has engaged in doing corporate training programs for various giants like LIC, Knowledge Management Commission, etc. She's on the board of Council for Fair Business Practices and executive body member in professional bodies. She is a regular invitee speaker in the symposiums and seminars organized by educational institutions and professional bodies that debate on contemporary subjects affecting business and economies. She's also got an award in the BVTI as the Women Entrepreneur in Education in 2018 and was recognized with the Devang Mehta Award as the Best Teacher in Strategy and Analytics in 2017. Over to you, ma'am, to put forth your views.
Good evening, and thanks for that wonderful introduction that you have given. It was long, but then it was wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me and making me a guest speaker this evening. The COVID-19 and its impact at a personal level, at a business level, and at an economic level. This is the subject matter of today's talk. I think that C19 is no longer a health pandemic. It has more become a mindset issue. And going forward, how far it will permanently alter the mindsets of the people, how it will affect the tastes and preferences of the people, and how far they would want to discipline their mindsets and daily habits is a big question mark. For the time being, everything seems as if the alterations are going to happen, and they are happening as well. But we are really not sure going forward how static it would be. Even before the C19, we were slipping into recession. There was slight unemployment in the economy. The NPAs were swelling. The interest rates were dropping down. And of course, the consumer behavior and the consumer pattern was really shaky. And the poor consumer demand was a characteristic feature of the economy. To add fuel to the fire, the C19 attacked us very badly in the month of February. And it's about 3 months now when we are grappling with that. C19 is no longer a health issue. It's more of a mindset issue. The reason being that going forward, we'll have to really see how permanently people alter their mindset towards businesses, towards their taste, towards their preferences, towards their lifestyle, towards their habits, and towards demand for various products and services. I have taken this entire talk at 3 levels. At the bottom of the pyramid, I keep the consumer, or I keep the individual whose mindset is going to dictate what is going to be his preference. At the next level, the mindset of the individuals will put a severe demand for business houses to shift their business models altogether, or some elements of the value chain may have to undergo certain changes, and they will have to constantly innovate across every element of the value chain. When the mindset of the people changes, the consumer preferences change, and the business models correspondingly change in the business houses, it will have a consequent impact on the economy. And the economy may either have to redeploy its resources, redivert its resources, or even displace its resources. But am I there? Am I there?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay. So we were talking about reallocation and redeployment of resources by the government. It could be physical resources or financial resources, but then redeployment would become essential when people's mindsets change and the business houses also alter their business models. A few days ago, I was watching the TV channel and surfing through the channels. I saw a channel where they said that the Ganges that is flowing across the Banaras and Varanasi is able to take, the water is completely fit for drinking, and one could dip the glass of, one could take water directly from the Ganges and drink. This was not the scenario about 4 months back. The Namami Gange project of the government of India has allocated 20,000 crores for the cleansing of the Ganga. The Ganges flows through 5 states in India, and out of the 20,000 crores, about 6,000 crores have been spent on cleansing it so far. What has happened is, after 3 months of closure, the Ganges has automatically cleaned itself. It is the report, actually, the TV report said that the mirror image of people is visible on the film of the Ganges, and one could dip a glass of water and drink it directly because it has become completely fit for drinking without any pollution. Now, did the Ganges demand this 6,000 crores at all? I'm not sure. All possibly it expected was a respite from the tormentation of the industrial houses and individuals. Now, after the lockdown, possibly in all the states, the situation of the Ganges would be automatic, would I presume would be the same. If 6,000 crores were deployed in some other place, then possibly an ailing economy like India would have been able to resurrect itself possibly in a better manner. The impact of the lockdown reflects that probably the 6,000 crores were spent only to rectify the sinful actions of the industrial houses and the selfish business needs of the individuals. I posit that if the people's mindsets change and they want the Ganges to be pure for 365 days in a year, they need not rely on the remaining crores of rupees that have been allocated by the government of India. They are so valuable at this point in time of recession that the people must understand that they should not divert the industrial effluence any longer into the Ganges. They must not throw plastic into it. They must not throw whatever they have in their hand into the Ganges. And I think the mortal remains of the deads and the gone should also not be diverted into the river. If this kind of mindset changes, I am 100% sure that those valuable resources which the government of India has with itself can be diverted for better issues to address the economy. Was the Ganges ever an environmental issue? I seriously doubt. The Ganges was always an emotional issue. The elections in Uttar Pradesh have always been fought, keeping Ganges as one of the top manifesto points. And that is because the people are so sentimental about the Ganges. Let me say that if they are so sentimental, let them also understand that they should no longer put a pressure on it. And they should realize that the Ganges has the right to be all pure and sublime. When the nature is averse to admitting certain human practices, the mindset of the man should alter correspondingly. And in this sense, I truly feel that the emotions are a function of mindset. And going forward, it's high time that the people realize that the making or the destruction of the Ganges lies in their own hands. War is a thing of past. We don't expect any more third world wars to happen in our communities or in economies any longer. But have we ever learned any lessons from these wars? I don't want to be skeptical about it, but Hiroshima, Nagasaki, or you talk about the Second World War, or possibly you may even talk about Indo-Pakistan War, the Indo-China War. You talk about US, you talk about Kuwait, you talk about Israel, you talk about Palestine. What are we exactly doing? See, what we are exactly, I fail to understand why we should be spending such huge amounts in protecting our borders, and why should military allocations take and sustained basis. I don't think that there is always a fear, there is always an animosity, there is always some kind of anxiety. And we are again and again and again spending money on upgradation of sophisticated weapons, purchase of technology, equipment. I don't know, we are always on road to actually buying newer and newer equipments to protect our borders. We have not reached mental tranquility. We have not reached military tranquility at all. That is what is my understanding. The COVID-19 is also a biomedical war. by design or default, the C-19 is a war which is least sensitive, which has been least sensitive to human beings, and business and profits have been placed above anything else. And this is the worst kind of wars that are possibly should never be fought in future. And if they are being conceptualized, I think it is the worst that the mankind can expect. The mindset of the people has not yet reached military tranquility, and that is why our military spends are not getting too negligible. It is bloating day after day. There is an insatiable appetite to display military power, grab territories, open disagreements on border issue, to frequently doing military trials and violating the international agreements. If the mindset of the higher authorities, governing bodies at the higher level in the governance, in the administration and system change, and we are able to develop some kind of consensus that these things are not required, then possibly the resources can be diverted towards something better, not only in India, but across the globe. The strength and character of an individual or an economy is not measured from what they do while they are being watched. In fact, it represents a better character when how they behave when they are not being watched. So I would like to give an example that in the recent times, I think about say 60 days of closure, the state governments were going through severe liquidity crunch. So what happened was the state governments decided that let us open the breweries and let us open the liquor shops for some time. And this would actually trigger the consumption and the cash in hand would keep ringing. Believe me, the mindsets of the people were sort of, I don't know how to describe it in words. Alcohol is a form of spirit. Many of us would know and many of us wouldn't. Now, alcohol being a form of spirit was kept open for about a few days so that the state governments could actually manage their expenditures, because there was a severe shutdown and lockdown. No business operations could be possible. Now, the mighty spirited people in India, once the lockdown, there was a temporary lift of the curbs, and then what happened was the shops were open for some time and alcohol was on sale. Now, the mighty spirited people in India climbed one over the other to grab a bottle of liquor for themselves. Social distancing, your gloves, your mask, everything evaporated in thin air. It only represents that when the curbs are on, the people are willing to be disciplined. And the moment you lift the curbs, the people, I don't know, behave in possibly the most irresponsible manner. This is probably a clear case of individual discipline, but collective disaster or collective anarchy. And in such cases, it is very important to state that when there was enough and more stock available, and the government had not even said that we are going to discontinue it, this was the behavior that was, evident on the streets. Barely after 1 hour of opening the shops, the administration had to shut it down because there was so much of confusion and chaos on the roads. Now, what are we heading to? When we say that the C-19 will have an impact and people will do this, the administration will do that, and the businesses will do this, I am actually questioning myself whether these things will actually happen, or they will happen only for a temporary period, or going forward, it is going to bring a permanent shift in the mindset. Now, that is, I think, more a question of astrological prophecy than anything else, because it's not coming out very clearly how people are going to behave. A subsection of the people are very disciplined. There is another subsection of the people which does not want to follow anything at all. So it's a very mixed reaction. Now, businesses definitely are going to be affected after C-19, but it's the individuals who are going to propel the consumer demand and dictate how the consumer pattern is. Responsible consumerism is going to be the talk of the day. See, the economy has to resurrect. We have to begin to start consuming, and to consume that, obviously the businesses have to flourish, the supply side has to be on, the liquidity crunch has to come down, there has to be more disposable income at the hands of the consumer. All of this has to happen, but then the consumer at the helm of the affair has to be more responsible. Let me give you an example as to what I say by being a responsible consumer. I do not know how many people have visited the Kaziranga National Park, how many have visited the Jim Corbett National Park, how many have gone to the Tanjore temples, how many have gone to Khajuraho temples, how many of them have gone to Surajkund Mela, and so many destinations which are there in India. But these people would have definitely gone to London, US, Paris for their vacations. Now, when the money has to be circulated within India and we need more disposable income at the hands of the consumer, it is preferable that after the lockdowns on the international pathways are lifted, people should not run abroad for their vacations or for any other reason. Responsible tourism means to travel only if it is purpose-led. Else, it would be most ideal and healthy to go to these tourist destinations. The people themselves are the biggest word of mouth publicity for their nations. They are the people who should market their tourist destinations. Let us not forget that India is not a country, it is a civilization. And it is the first and foremost duty of the people of India to demonstrate that we have the best of cultural sites, we have the best of food habits, we have the best of skills. You have to, it is a way to, I mean, why not take pictures in Kashmir? Why not take pictures in the, keeping Thar Desert in the backdrop? Why not keep Tanjore temples in the background and take a photograph and post it on Facebook and social media and try to promote the Indian tourist destinations? We are always interested in on social media to put pictures if you have gone to Paris or if you have gone to London. What happens in this case is the tourists would be attracted and it will increase the foreign reserves, it will give foreign exchange reserves, it will give employment to the local people, and there will be, I mean, an increase in the demand for goods and services. Irresponsibly, after the lockdown is lifted, people should not start traveling abroad because it's a good vacation time. In fact, we need more money to circulate within the Indian economy to develop. Most of the times, let me also say, ask not what the country has done for you, ask what you have done for your country. In that sense, please don't leave everything to the government of India to see how the cash is to be managed, how the liquidity should be managed, how the non-performing assets should be managed, how to manage the interest rates, how the monetary policy should be structured. It is the people themselves who can be a little more responsible and sort of contributing in seeing how the reserves can improve, how the energy reserves need not be depleted like this. Possibly the crude oil imports and natural gas imports of India is the highest. We expend the maximum on that. And while traveling, whether by road or by rail or by any other mechanism or by air, we are putting severe pressure. I mean, pollution index increase, environmental issues are a concern, civic amenities are put to, some kind of stress. The resources are, I think we need to seriously think as to how we can actually market ourselves in the globe and get foreign exchange reserves into the country. Another good example would be that if people are working towards being health freaks, and if they are, in the previous example itself, let me add, if we were to promote our own tourism, then the airline industry may want to look at hub and spoke model. They may want to reach to those destinations, not the capital regions, not Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras. They may want to run flights to these tourist destinations, and the government of India can actually improve the tourist infrastructure at different places so that the foreign exchange reserves can improve, the foreign spending in India can improve, because tourism is really an underserved sector in India. We need to severely improve, and I look at strong possibilities after COVID-19 that if we do the right actions, the right things will come up. The airlines industry may have to alter its business models and look at smaller flights reaching deep pocket destinations, but it will be a brilliant thing to happen. We should understand how to be responsible is all that I'm saying. And even when we are talking about demands, we are talking about consumption, we need to be more responsible while demanding them. Another one single example from the healthcare sector, as much as my counterpart from Malta was speaking on it. See, India is a nation where we are talking about 0.5 beds for 1,000 people. The index is pathetic, and we are over 7.5 possibly over 7 decades after our independence. Education and healthcare, two service sectors, have been really underserved in the last 7 decades. And it's not a real good news or an appreciable news or something that we would like to even hear. And I mean, I seriously feel these are sectors that need real relook. Considering the fact that it is like this, we should understand that going forward, if the people switch to naturopathy, to Ayurveda, to wellness management, to taking stems, roots, and Ayurvedic decoctions, then the pharma industries, the pharma companies may have to relook at their value chain in a different manner. Possibly integrated wellness management would be the talk of the day. And we will have people from all, all sectors, as in there could be an Ayurvedic expert, there could be an homeopathic expert, there could be a Unani expert, and all of them sitting together to look at integrated wellness management in future. In such cases, whether the pharma companies may want to relook at the value chain, look at other business models to satisfy the Indian consumer, needs to be seriously thought about. Having said what I have said, I feel e-cycles, if they were as a part of health regimen going to attack the Indian markets, then the automobile companies may find it useful to relook at e-cars and e-cycles, and possibly the automobile cars may come, we can see less of them on the roads, and we can see e-cycles and e-bikes and possibly e-cars more on the road. And this will actually severely, in two ways it will help. Our energy resources can be diverted elsewhere. It will put less stress on the environment. And more importantly, all those unmet needs of the economy, we will have more reserves, we will have more cash to expend on them. Having said all this, the second aspect of our talk is about online education. And during the C19 period, or the virus period, or the COVID period, we have experienced that several businesses have done too well. And those businesses are, and chiefly among those businesses, the consumption of technology. We have had maximum consumption of technology in the last 3 months. And whether it is Netflix, or whether it is home entertainment, whether it is Zoom, or whether it is Skype, talk about it. We have enough to talk. All the, they are all something, the development of apps for national security, the use of robotics, the use of artificial intelligence, the use of online shopping, gaming, online dating, home delivery systems, and above all, uploading of creative content on the YouTube. All of these has happened, but they are a function of the biggest industry, which is the consumption of technology. As an extension of the consumption of technology, the students, possibly the student community, has made use of e-learning, distance learning, and educational technology as never before. I think 32 crore students have made use of e-learning and e-learning technology during this time. The online education market in India is pegged to be at about 40 billion in 2019. And the industry has been steadily growing at a rate of 21%. And 64% of the growth of such apps and online education is attributable to its meaningful content. The closure has resulted in nearly 32 crores of students being affected. But one thing, as my Malta counterpart said, and I'm completely agreeable to it, is that in the Indian context also, these e-learning programs are perfectly fitted as a complementing resource and not as a substitute resource. Children can never forget to go to school. Up to the college level, it is important to go to the school, go to the college, because it helps us to learn orderliness, discipline. It learns certain social habits. It helps us to know about gender differences. There are so many other, learning is not about reading, writing, and arithmetic. The cognitive domain, the affective domain, the cognitive domain, the psychomotor domain, everything is nourished when the child goes to school.
So I mean, at best, we can look at that e-learning program as a substitute to tutorials and more at a higher level of education. But certainly, I do not look at it as a substitute for mainstream education. And more importantly, I feel that these e-learning programs will work excellent for rural education, especially when the dropouts of girl children is very, very high even today in Bihar, in interior pockets of Rajasthan, in Bihar, in Madhya Pradesh, in Uttar Pradesh also, where religion, caste, all these things play a crucial role. I think educational technology, if it reaches the grassroots and the required IT infrastructure is provided in the rural conclaves, then I think educational technology and e-learning programs will do a brilliant job to educate our rural children. They are far more capable, they are far more skilled, they are far more intelligent than their urban counterparts. It's only that we do not give them the required opportunity. So in that sense, if we are looking at e-learning programs, I seriously feel that social habits, discipline, regularity, punctuality, wearing good dresses, respect for each other's feeling, respect for the teachers, appreciating differences, and emotional attachment, all these things, social habits come only when you go out and learn. And above all, how do we enjoy the classroom experiences if peers ask questions and doubts, that it is sometimes hilarious, it is sometimes serious, it is so knowledgeable. We cannot substitute all these things through our e-learning programs. What about the real life experiences that we give them? We give them practical observational case studies, we give them live projects, and then the classroom doubts are solved. They get hands-on experiences over so many things. I'm also very doubtful whether e-learning programs will bring the real leadership qualities in students and they will become good decision makers. I am skeptical about it, though I don't want to be pessimistic about it. So I mean, e-learning programs are here to stay. Definitely they are here to stay, and they will be there in the market. However, they will be only as a substitute. They cannot be a substitute. They can only be a complementing factor in our Indian economy. Having said all these things, what do we expect from the economy, or what do we expect from the government, or what do we see at this point in time as an obligation? The businesses will change their models, the people will change their mindsets, and ultimately we go and stand to the at the hands of the governance and administration. What are they expected to do in order to fuel the consumer market? The first thing that they need to do is to build the consumer confidence. The consumer confidence is at an all-time low today. The unorganized sector, 11 crore laborers have been shifted from one part of India to the other, and there's so much of commotion and confusion as to how they are going to manage their alternate income from their villages is also dried up now, and they have almost reached a zero state. So it's the responsibility of the government to build the consumer confidence. We have to focus more on liquidity. We have to focus more on employment. We have to generate more employment, and we have to keep the liquidity and cash reserves rolling. So in that case, we don't have to serve the 150 million cash rich people in our economy. Instead, we have to see the economic strata much below that and see the economic strata at the lowest level in India are the people who earn for that day and spend for that day, earn for that day and spend for that day. They are the people who really trigger the consumer market. Now, similarly, the lower income group and the middle income group also trigger consumerism. We are not supposed to look at the 150 million people who are cash rich and look at some killer innovation at this time. Whether countries learn anything from India or not, they will definitely learn that India is the best in Jugaad innovation, and we will certainly come out of all these things in the best possible manner. All that we need to do is we should not rely too much on the stock market and the financial market index, and remove the fear within our mind. The recession is a cyclic feature and not a structural feature. Forget the projections, keep the calm, keep the composure alive, reach out to the community as we have been doing so far, show compassion, show sensitivity. Do not engage in WhatsApp and do not engage in forwards that are not required. And at the end of the day, media reports can at best to be astrological projections. Please do not rely too much on them and say 20 million people are going to be off the job. I mean, how do you know? How do you know 20 million? What kind of projection is this? Suppose 10 million people alone were off the job, what would you do? So these are all indicators that is unnecessarily creating anxiety, panic. We have to be prepared. Our minds have to be prepared, but we don't have to panic. So all these things put together, there have to be policies by the government of India, which should be consumer-led, which is most important. And most importantly, do not remove people from jobs because it will further create unemployment. With all these things, I think we should be able to come out of this COVID-19 in the best possible manner. Be positive is my blood group itself, and I will not hesitate to say that we are a country who have survived better shocks than this. So this is just like, it'll come, this too shall pass. I'm passing on the platform for a question and answer session. So Vineet, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us. I would now request Mr. Vineet Upadhyay, MD at P.U. Educational Service, to give his views and to proceed with the moderation. Over to you, sir.
Have we lost him?
I think he's on mute.
I think he's on mute. We'll
Sir,
possibly
please
have
unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Ma'am, please turn your screen. That was a request. I would, I was putting up my view in that way that, despite of the difficulties that we are into, amidst of this particular crisis, I can still remember the scenes that I saw during 26/11 situation, which was a biggest terrorist attack on Mumbai, the city where I have been born and brought up. The spirit of people is something which is going to be very critical after this situation settles down a bit. The more spirited we come out of this, that is something which will help us to revive the economy as well. That will help us to overcome the personal barriers that we are going to face. Yes, of course, due to kind of a lockdown into a one home, we are not able to communicate. But yes, of course, we have found a ways to do so. So, of course, there has been a lot of developments that would take place. There will be certain new innovations that would be coming up. But again, the keeping alive of the economy and education is going to be critical for the time to come. As we have a very limited time to deal with. Today, I will not put forward my views a lot, but I will put forward the questions to our speakers. Joshua sir, my first question to you is that how do you see that, what would be the situation of this particular thing, that how economies will find it easier to escape out of this particular situation? How much time it would take, or how much smooth this process would be?
Well, that is a very good question. Thank you for the question. Well, I think every economy will behave in a different way depending on how strong and how resilient the economy has been prior to being hit by the situation that we are in at the moment. How smooth it is, I think no economic transformation is smooth, and therefore we will need to look at the different factors that are making up the economy and what will be addressing that. With regards to how long it will take, besides every economy will behave in a different way, I think the different sectors within the economy will also behave in a different way. As we've seen, there are some sectors in the economy which have not been hit by the pandemic. The essential services were not being hit. At the same time, things like tourism, for example, will take a very long time to recover. So what we will be seeing most probably is that we will see some sectors which will recover quicker than others, and there will be some sectors which will take a much longer time to recover. Some economists are predicting that, for example, the tourism industry will take between 2 to 4 years for it to recover again and come to pre-COVID-19 numbers. The traveling, the airline industry is in the same situation, and therefore we will need to wait and see what will happen in this period of time for it to take up the economy.
Vijaya Lakshmi ma'am, my question to you would be, I guess ma'am, your mic is mute. Can you open up your mic?
Yeah.
You know, there is one beautiful question that has come up that you talked about, you know, e-learning apps. Like, will e-learning apps giants in future would have a major role to play after the pandemic situation is closed? Like Byju's is there, you know.
Vedantu is there.
Yeah.
Yes. So what exactly is the question?
How much bigger their role would be in the post-COVID situation?
In the post-COVID situation, see, please understand, there has been a 50% jump all of a sudden in the consumption of these e-learning programs. Okay, that is because it's an excellent thing, because the knowledge seekers or the students have not wasted their time at home and have paid money and got the benefit of these particular programs. But after COVID, when the institutions open, I think students would be interested in going and socializing, going to the college, and these kinds of programs are here to stay, no doubt. But they will only be as a complementing factor for short-term courses. Or I think it will be best if I would say that it is for skill-based programs. Suppose you want to learn something about artificial intelligence or blockchain technology, something you want to learn about R programming, or you want to learn something about writing and coding. For such bulleted skills which are necessary in your office and which are necessary for you to perform well in the office, these kind of programs will work. Point number two, children will find it very difficult to go to tuition classes now or tutorials. So Byju's, Vedantu will be a perfect substitute for those tutorial classes. They can go, they can see, they can enjoy, and it will be a good learning experience. Without stepping out of home, they can learn. And one more thing which I really wanted to say is that for primary, secondary and tertiary, for primary and secondary education, that is from standard 1 to 5 and from standard 5 to 12, I think e-learning programs will be beneficial if it is taught in the rural pockets of India. We are really suffering because there is a single teacher school, there is a single board, there is no infrastructure there. I think there, if the adequate infrastructure is put up and these kind of mechanisms are injected there, it will certainly improve the education index in the rural pockets, which is really required. But these programs are here to stay. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, I would request you to turn your screen a bit. That is a small request.
Is that
Joshua
okay?
sir, meanwhile.
Is that okay?
No, ma'am. Just a bit more.
Towards the right? Is that okay?
Yes, towards right.
Yes, I think, is it okay now?
Ma'am, horizontal to vertical.
Shall I make it like this?
Yes, ma'am. Perfect. Joshua sir, my question to you that, will this particular situation of going online for digital education and all, how it will contribute to the holistic development of the students?
If I understood correctly, do you mean how will online education contribute to the development of students, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is interesting because I think online education is something which is relatively new. Up till now, all the models, or at least most of the models that we were accustomed to in regards to education, was a face-to-face interaction where people will come to class and they will attend class, and there is a social interaction there. Now, this has taken us to a different situation. Now, when we talk about online, there are different types of online education that we need to look at. And the first type would be where you have live sessions, where you are with your class and with your students, and you are delivering a session online to these students. There is a different type where you can record a video and you put the video, and then the students will look at it at a later stage, which is again another type or another form of education, right? So, you know, when we look at all of this, I think we have online education on one side, we have face-to-face and personal education on the other side. I think the difference in this mainly will lie in the formation of character and in the growing up of children. I think the biggest impact will be on primary and secondary school children who are still forming their character, who are still forming their personality, and therefore the social interaction helps them to learn new things and helps them to form their character. I think online education can become very good and very mainstream in education related at university level or at post-secondary level and at lifelong learning. I think if we manage to blend and adopt a blended learning approach, having partly face-to-face interaction and partly online interaction, I think that could have a very good impact on the way we develop our students and we develop our children.
Vijaya ma'am, this is one question.
Vineet, I would like to
Yeah.
add to Joshua sir by saying that I mean, social learning is very, very important. And when students visit schools and colleges, their mental hygiene improves. Okay, there is respect for each other's thoughts, views. Okay, we accept differences in a graceful manner, and there is a sense of orderliness, there is discipline, there is punctuality. Okay, and we develop role models. Only we think of our teachers, and then we make role models for ourselves in our lives. Okay, and then we have to understand that we have to emulate the performance of our elders, we have to assimilate good habits, we have to develop certain other, you know, all these things come only when we step out of home and we are able to go to a face-to-face learning. I am not sure if we will be giving good business to ophthalmologists after doing lot of e-learning. I think we are building a good business for ophthalmologists, because I think the eyes will severely get spoiled, the kind of digital exposure that children of today are having. And in addition to that, we may also require certain other experts, because the radiation that comes from all these electronic gadgets is highly you know, detrimental to their skin. We can get into severe skin disorders. Preferable that children are a little more hardworking, take down notes while they are sitting in the class, and not to look at YouTube repeats again and again and become lazier and lazier. I am being a little harsh, but I think I need to put across my point.
You would be surprised, ma'am. This was a question that I was going to put up, because there were round about approximately 800 questions which were received from the people.
Okay.
Out of that, approximately 25 to 30 people had asked the same question, that whether we were telling kids not to use phones because it affects your eyes badly, and now we are telling them just use a mobile phone to attend the classes. It's a
Vineet,
make a small comment on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you aware of any research, scientific research, which shows that there is a link between harming your eyes and looking at a screen? Because, you know, I haven't seen really any conclusive research on this topic. And I think, it is more an excuse that us parents use with children, not to look at screens all the time and to get out and talk to children, rather than there is any scientific basis to it. I don't know. I'm just a comment.
Yeah. Vijaya ma'am, please,
Yeah.
if you can put a highlight on that.
No, I am sorry that I may not have to, I will not develop a complete consensus to what Joshua sir is saying, because in the Indian context, we want the children to interact with parents while we are at home, learn the value systems, sit and eat. All the time, the Indian children are digging their eyes into this mobile or through internet or through some digital device. They are keeping themselves preoccupied, which is not a healthy social habit. So they need to play out, they need to ventilate, they need to interact. I think these are fundamental tenets on which we have been brought about, and we would want our next generation also to be like that. And this is just, I think there is research, Joshua sir, to say that the radiations from the laptop actually are darkening your skin, and it is leading to severe dermatological problems. I myself have gone through this, because when I was doing my PhD research, I was using adequate, enough and more eye fresheners over my eyes, because they used to really pain me when I was dealing with data analysis and while I was writing my thesis. So it's not wrong to say that these gadgets over a period of time can cause some kind of disturbance. It's important that children step out, they learn the value systems of punctuality, wearing good clothes, coming to the class in time, leaving in time, developing teamwork, team thoughts, developing leadership qualities by assimilating each other's differences, accepting differences with grace and dignity, having emotional quotient, emotional adjustment. All these things are important, and I don't discount the importance of e-learning program, because extraordinary situation is calling for extraordinary measures. So at this time, if we have advised our students, advised our children at home to go for electronic learning, it is only because the situation is like that. Once we are out of it, we should get back to normalcy. And there is nothing like new normal. Let me correct that also. Either it is normal or it was the earlier normal. If it is normal, then what is new about it? And if it is new, then it is not normal. I don't know where these terms are being coined from. So I don't want to develop the term called new normal. Either it is old or it is new, and either it was before or it is after. That's it.
Yeah, I have a few questions. We are reaching to our time limit. So, but I will take one or two questions. I'll combine it and I'll ask it to both of you. My question to you, Joshua sir, is that, too much of online education, because for India, we see this particular situation that, we have sudden transformation from a regular teaching to a digitalization straight away. And because of this, many of these people have this question that, it is very stressful for faculties as well as for the students to suddenly, shift their balance from regular teaching to the digitalization. And how do you see the role of social media as far as the whole situation is concerned in terms of improving the education?
I'm not sure I understood the first question because the line was cutting. Could you please repeat it?
Yeah, I was saying that, in India, we were not that, using a lot of digital education. We have suddenly shifted due to this pandemic situation to the digitalization on a larger scale. Yes, it was there, but not that heavily used. Now it is totally a situation where we are dependent on digitalization. Now, because of which most of the faculties and teachers are finding it that, it is a kind of a stressful affair. And how do you see the role of social media will help us in improving the education as far as this situation is concerned?
Okay, yes. Well, I think it all goes down, or it all boils down to the model of education that we are using. Up till now, the model that we had, or the model that we have, is based on a group of students coming into a class, and a lecturer or a teacher or an educator standing in front of the students or in front of the class and discussing and giving a lecture, and then they go away and they do their homework, and then they come back and it is corrected and you give feedback about that. I think that is the model, in very few words, that we have become accustomed to and on which education is built. Now, all of a sudden, we have a situation where that does not exist anymore, and a different model is used. And obviously, when something is new, there are a number of difficulties. The first thing is, if something is new and I am not familiar with the technology, then that will create stress and anxiety, and teachers might feel those emotions, and they need the support to be able to go through that, and by being provided with training and by being provided with resources and material to be able to work in this new reality. Also, an important thing is that the material that we have developed, and the resources that we have developed have all been developed based on the model that we have been using up till now. Whereas if we are going to change the model of education, then we need to recreate new resources and new lecture plans and new material. And it is not just simply having a presentation, and the presentation, instead of showing it on a TV screen in class or on a projector in class, you just show it on a screen by sharing your screen on Zoom or on Teams or on WebEx or whatever that is. I think there is a whole way of doing things. In fact, I teach, I've been doing some training, and I've been teaching teachers on how they can adapt and adopt the new technologies, and what are the difficulties and what are the things that they have to do in order to learn how to use this new technology and engage students. And that is another important thing that we need to talk about. It's the engagement of students and the control over students. In class, you are seeing all the people in front of you, and you are interacting with them, and you can create engagement simply by you being present there. When you are doing this online, there is quite a difficulty. There is a barrier between you and the students, and if they do not switch on their cameras, for example, you might be spending an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours talking on your own, and not knowing whether there is anyone listening to you on the other side. And that is an experience that I have experienced myself. But having said that, the first time I used to teach at university a very long time ago, about 15 years ago, and I went back to teaching at university now about 2 years ago, and I do some lecturing there. And the first time I went into the classroom, every student had either a tablet or a laptop open in front of them. And I said, wow, this is different. When I used to be here, I didn't have a laptop in front of me, or very few of us had a laptop in front of them. And when you look at them, you don't really know whether any of these students are listening to you, or else
Yes.
are browsing Facebook or chatting with their friends whilst being in class. And sometimes, I have my style is that I walk around the classroom and I talk to people and I engage people. And sometimes you can see people hiding their screens very quickly when you get next to them, because they don't want you to see what they are looking at and what they are doing. So this whole thing about how education needs to take place, I think it is very important that we look at the models that we are using, and if we are going to change the model, then that model has to be changed completely, and we need to train teachers on how to use the new model. We need to have new resources on how to be applied to this new model, and we need to make sure that what we are doing is in line with the model. Now, with regards to social media, I think social media plays a very, very important part. I think we need to use social media more in education. I don't think we are using it enough. And just like we have been experimenting with things like crowdfunding, I think we should also start thinking about crowd education and looking at this kind of thing. And there is so much, the internet and peer reviews, there is so much material out there. Of course, one has to be very careful, because not every material is good material. I think we have unprecedented amounts of information, unprecedented amounts of resources that we can use. And I think, using social media better and in a stronger way should help us, especially if we want to go and change the model of education that we have been talking about.
Let me tell you, both of you, that you guys are rock star right now on our Telegram and other groups, because people are just loving and giving wonderful remarks about the session. Now, just a last question before we go ahead, because we have already extended the time. My last question, and very critical one, Vijaya Lakshmi ma'am. Uh, Two things that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about, many of the people have a question that we might face a difficult situation across the border with our neighbor, close neighbor, which loves us like anything. And another thing is there, that the educational system at rural areas are finding it difficult, because sometimes there is no connectivity, there is no proper infrastructure. How to overcome this particular problems that they are facing? We are coming to an end of the session, so I am combining both the questions for you. This were most asked question, and about unorganized sectors difficulties.
Yeah, unorganized sector, what is the question?
uh, how we will see the right now they are curtailed in their spending, and how we will see them playing a role in reviving the economy.
No, the unorganized sector is 11 crores in India. Okay. And they were all, most of them were not effectively employed for the last about 3 months. Their alternate source of employment is at the village, where they are either agricultural laborers or they have their own fields to work on. Now, I think during the sowing season, there were further problems also, which was, there when they were sowing the seeds, there were so many issues, such as, not being able to buy the fertilizers, not being able to buy the required machinery and all of those things. So the economy, see, for me, I have already told you, if you have to employment is extremely important, and money has to be at the hands of the consumers. Now, what the government of India is doing is, there are people with Jan Dhan accounts and there are people with non-Jan Dhan accounts. The government has to carefully go through that and give cash into the hands of the they have to put cash into the hands of the consumers. You don't have an alternative. What they are actually doing is, through the public distribution system, they are giving essential items of household, such as oil, your wheat and rice, but that's not all that they need. There are so many other things for which cash is required. So for the next about 3 to 3.5 months, it is important that those people without Jan Dhan account there should be a mechanism to put cash into their hand. And don't talk about deficits at this moment. Deficits, we will handle it later on. For the right moment, when it is a war-like situation, we need to put cash into the hands of the consumer. Slowly, when the real estate improves or the infrastructure sector improves, they will all get into mainstream employment, and it will take a while. I'm looking at something like December of 2020 or maybe February of 2021, when all of them will be effectively engaged. Another thing is, the MSME sector has to be put into order. That is where the maximum unemployment triggered during the last season. So it's important that the banks do not start giving loans without checking the credentials, because starting the startup is very easy, but when it shuts down with the bank leaving several people unemployed. I think the policies of the government have to be more consumer-led going forward. So I think that will take care of the whole thing.
We had a lot of questions coming in during the session. We were, I guess, most of the questions which were there were answered during what you were presenting. So we would not take much of your time. I would request our intern, Saurabh, to come over and please express a vote of thanks. Before that, we have crossed more than 175 likes on the video. We have got round about more than 100 people liking our channel in today's session. So these are some of the things. We got registrations from Sri Lanka, Nepal, Oman, Jeddah. Most of the people were watching this telecast that was being done on the YouTube. So thanks to all of them, and I hand it over to Saurabh.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. I am Saurabh, interning with P.U.'s Education Services. Thanks is a small word to express our gratitude for being a part of this webinar. Thank you, Mr. Joshua Samit, sir, and Dr. Vijaya Lakshmi Rangarajan, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge. Thank you, Professor Vinit, sir, for moderating the session. And thank you to all the participants. The feedback link will be shared in all the groups and will be open till 9 p.m. today. Certificate will take 10 days, so requesting all not to ask or message before 20th June. Any institute or college who wishes to collaborate with us can reach us through the contact details provided. Thank you. Stay home and stay safe.